Hello, Thumb Culture fans, and welcome to a first look of the F1 2019 game pre-launch. So we are going to be looking at a majority of aspects of the game. We got to see this is all single player focused. As you can see on the screen, this is obviously looking at the F2 cars that are available to play. So we're going to be going into the F2 sort of Grand Prix that we did there. You can see I just selected Lando Norris. We do end up going to Japan. Few things immediately to notice before we get any further into this. You can already see that the menus have changed quite drastically. The formatting is more official. It's a lot more like the official Formula 1 that you can see when you actually watch it live on TV. The settings here, as you can see, they're pretty much the same as they were from F1 2018. Obviously, they've been tied up quite nicely. You can see all the different little aspects are all the same. The qualifying sessions are all the same. Practice sessions are all there too. They have added this little neat little menu there, which is a help menu, just to help you get affiliated with the game a little bit more and sort of understand what the menus do, what they explain a little bit, any options that you've not really been seen before. They have got it all visible and there for you. So here we go with the F2 Championship here in Japan. Immediately you will look at the car setup screen. So the tyre selection screen is pretty much exactly the same, but you'll see the car setup screen is a little bit different in comparison to F1 on 2018. So immediately you can see the layout's obviously quite different. Again, the fonts are all the same as it is before, but immediately look, transmission is very different. In F1 2018 you had two different bars for the F1 car. In the F2 version you don't have that, you only have the one. You also see that there is no ballast. I know it's a very hot topic that most people have been talking about. It's not always been the area that most drivers have been very happy about when it comes to league racing, but I think it's just more because they're in a bit of a comfort zone, and this really breaks them out of that and makes them have to adapt on the fly and try to really optimize their car setups. Also, for the brake bias, there is no change to brake pressure, it's just brake bias, so that is another aspect that is different. So the braking will be consistent across all of the F2 cars. You can also see the tyres are the same, there's no real differences there. And we're going to get straight into it. Ignore the little off I had just there, that was definitely not a driver mistake, I can reassure you. However, immediately you can see the graphical changes are phenomenal. This game looks absolutely incredible. You just saw a little bit of sun rays there poking through the trees, really started to give us an insight as to just how beautiful this game is. And speaking to Lee, the game director for Formula 1, he was saying himself how they've really focused on the lighting and trying to make the game just pop a little bit as you're going around. Obviously, being in cockpit cam, it does mean that you do get to see this a lot more firsthand. The lighting is very much in your eyes. And that's the excuse I'm going to use for that little off I just did there. But the F2 car felt really good. You could definitely feel a difference between the F2 and the F1 cars. The F2 felt a lot more heavier. When it came to the braking zones, you can see that you have to brake a lot earlier. The pace is obviously going to be a little bit slower because of the fact the cars are so heavy and you don't have as much aerodynamic pressure. But it does mean, though, you do have to, again, adapt to a different style of driving in comparison to what you had in F1 2018. Some other features I really like you can see here, is the actual steering wheel itself. Now, being a cockpit cam driver, I like to use the steering wheel quite a lot to give me the information from the wheel to sort of tell me information about the car, the gears I'm in, the track position, the speed of the lap I'm on, etc., etc. And that little 0.7 there as well, you can see in the bottom left, is actually the fuel remaining on your car. So again, more information that you didn't get as much of in the previous game, and it's a lot more clear, and it just looks like it's been sharpened up just a touch. You can see the graphics at the top there, qualifying complete, and you saw the fastest lap and now an invalidated lap. They've added that into the game as well from last time. They didn't have that, it was just a little message that popped up at the bottom of your screen. I think that makes it just so much better and really immerses you like you would be in an official Formula 1. So now, start of the Grand Prix, pretty decent start, no real major issues for me. Had a little bit of a back end kick out there because I just got a bit too heavy on the accelerator. Again, that's just the difference that the cars have with the weight that they're carrying through. The sounds, I'm just going to stop talking for a second so you can hear the sounds of the other cars on the track. And it just sounds so good. The F2 engine is just really raw, and you really just feel the power that you can get from the car. And I mean, even the names above the cars are actually a lot better too. I really like these new fonts. I think they really suit the game perfectly. There was a few little situations for me that I thought could really do with being slightly improved. I mean, again, they could do with better grip on the tyres. Definitely not a driver making excuses. But But it was really good to see the way that you can crash out in the game is much more improved. Hitting the wall there, you can see the wheel just blow off, and that was the end of my Grand Prix. But the dynamics of it has been improved. I do like that quite considerably. And the only other slight sort of tweak I would make is the engine sound for the F1 car. It's definitely more realistic now. I just feel like it's missing a little bit more of a bit of raw from the car. So we are now in an F1 car. This is the Mercedes, and we're driving around Monza in time trial. Some little additions you can see in the top right. You can see the sectors, so the sector 1, 2, and 3. I think that's really useful from somebody who's trying to improve. Having the sectors there just makes it so you really want to focus on improving those particular parts. It's not always so visible until you go back to the garage in F1 2018. You have to go back to it to be able to see where you were struggling in comparison to previously, whereas now you can see, using those little handy graphics there, if it's red, you very clearly didn't go faster. If it's green, obviously you improved, and that's really important as a driver to know that information. Again, another slight little off there, sticking to the overdrive meme as is always. But again, same situation, the tyres as well. Look at, you can already see the tyre wear becoming a lot more visible. You didn't have that so much in F1 2018. You did have tyre wear. You could see a certain degree of tyre wear, but it's just become a lot more visible. And again, really sort of bringing you into the immersive feel. And that just made it extra important to me. The wheel itself has actually changed quite a lot versus F1 2018, but also the detail that they've put into the gloves, as you can see just there. It looks so much more realistic, and when this game is played in 4K, you can really see how beautiful this game is, and it just pops out. They've put a lot of focus into the tree depth as well. They wanted to make the trees a lot more visible, and I think they've done a phenomenal job at making the game seem even more realistic just from that graphical detail alone. We will get to visit the F1 Legends area of the game shortly. We are going to touch that in just a tad, but as you can see, I'm trying to improve my time over and over again. I did get a little bit carried away with the time trial when I was there in Codemasters, but just whilst we're on the topic of that, Codemasters really looked after me on this day, and a massive thank you to them for facilitating this and giving us the opportunity to do this video in the actual HQ themselves. It was great to really experience F1 2019, and Lee obviously did a phenomenal job to answer all of my questions, of which there were many. They were talking about multiplayer quite a lot too. Obviously with the F1 Esports has only just finished, and it was a roaring success. It was really good to see, and obviously every driver really gave it absolutely everything. And it's games like this and these little they're only slight little cosmetic changes, but they make a whole world of difference to a league racer and to someone who's trying to improve themselves as a driver. And here we go now. So this is the F1 Legends Championship. So this is where the Prost versus Senna battle is. And as you can imagine, I chose Senna because I'm a massive fan of Ayrton Senna and everything he did for the sport when he was around. So this is an overtake challenge that needs to be done on Monza, driving the very legendary McLaren 1990 car. So listen to the engine straight off the bat. So beautiful. And again, you get the same sort of realism as before, where you can see, oh, I just went a little bit offline there, but the way that the car brakes and the way that the car oversteers as you come out the corners, the way that the gears change down as well, is just so realistic. And they spent a lot of time and effort to go and visit these cars in the museums and everywhere else that they can be driven, so they could capture absolutely every element of the car. They wanted to make sure that the gearbox felt the way that it did back in the day, and they also wanted to make sure that the engine sounds exactly as it did back in the day. And honestly, they've done such an incredible job of this. The way that when you're driving around this track and you're overtaking the other drivers, you can really feel how much on the limit you need to be with this car. It's just so good to see. Again, coming up on another driver coming up into turn 4 and 5. And I struggled to get the car stopped in time for that chicane there, and you can tell. Again, the same sort of situation. These drivers have to brake much earlier. They have to really throw the car in and just hope that the car sticks there. They didn't have the aerodynamic pressure that they've got nowadays. It's very different. And so this is a very raw breed of drivers. And again, a little off there, but I'm still trying to close in on them. I did set myself to easy because I'm not the greatest driver in the world, but I just wanted to try and show you guys how it felt to be able to do what Senna did back in the day. The wheel itself, you can also see that they've really tried to stay as close to realism as well. There's none of that fancy features, but there is one thing that they had to do in order to make this car stay in the game, which is obviously there was a ban on cigarette advertising, which is why it's not there when it comes to the actual cars themselves. So they've had to remove that to keep it allowed in the game. However, I do want to just talk about the menus really quick. As you can see, look at how very tight it is, and they've made it, the cars in this little screen here. You can actually do a little showroom where you can rotate the car and have a look around and get all aspects of the car and see where it works and how it works. So it's good. I really like it. So that is it from us here at Thumb Culture. Thank you again, Codemasters, for this opportunity to review this game. It's been an absolute pleasure as always. And I am Ben Regan McConnell out. Good night.